العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه. Is anybody else? No the ladies there?
No.
So do you actually need to? I don't think we need that. Huh?
No value for the audience.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, suppose you can come a little bit closer. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Ba'd. So we've reached the halaqat 17, alhamdulillah, and we're talking about the various detriments of the tongue. Now, we're going to talk about another, test and trial and tribulation that human beings have to face, and that is anger. Control of anger. And since this is a topic that everyone is concerned about, however, our ulama, alhamdulillah, the Quran itself and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the ulama, of Islam have looked at it from the lens of the wahi and the lens of the prophetic and divine knowledge, so the insight is much deeper, inshallah, as we'll be seeing, inshallah. So derogation of anger. So number one, anger is a flame. It's a flame that actually takes place, right? And a person manifests during a rage of anger an element of Satan, as in, this is what Satan told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why didn't you prostrate when I told you to prostrate to Adam? So what did he say? He said, you have created me from fire, and you've created him from clay. So that was actually arrogance on his part, which is what caused his eternal damnation. Arrogance is a terrible thing. So the point here, though, is that he is saying, I've been created from fire. So fire, right? The nature of clay, on the one hand, like Adam alayhi salam, is made from clay. So the nature of clay is tranquility. It's clay. It's tranquil. It's calm. It's peaceful, right? Whereas the nature of fire is to flare and blaze and commotion and disarray, right? So the outcome of anger is malice and envy. So when the anger takes place, it's a connection. It's correlated with Satan, because he's made out of fire, and that's a kind of a satanic fire that, burns our minds and our hearts and, this world and the next. So from that which points to the derogation of anger, Hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, Inna rajulan qala lin-nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, awsini, qala la taghdab, wa raddadahu mirara. So a man came to Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and said, give me good advice. So Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam replied, don't get angry. And he said it again and again. And actually, the rest of the hadith is that he asked, okay, Osini, give me some more advice. Don't get angry. Give me some more advice. Don't get angry. All right? It's also narrated. It's narrated probably from Abdullah ibn Amr, however, I didn't find a very strong narration, but the meaning of it is, in any case, very similar to what the former one is, and that is that he asked, what will distance me from the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, don't get angry. You want to be far away from Allah's anger, then you don't get angry. Don't get angry. Okay, so does that mean period? Or is there different types of anger? And yes, there is different types, different stations of anger, and we'll look at that soon, inshallah. Also, the hadith of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, very enlightening. ليس الشديد بالسرعة إنما الشديد الذي يملك نفسه عند الغضب. متفق عليه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه. So Nabi Alayhi Salatu says the strong one, who's the powerful one, strong man, it's not the one who can throw down people in a wrestling match. Yusuf? Rather, the strong one is the one who can control himself in a fit of anger. That's difficult. I mean, anybody can build up big muscles and throw people around. That's not a big deal. The big deal is, controlling this anger, which is a satanic fire that burns you in the heart. Okay. So Ikramah, Mawla ibn Abbas, a very famous tabi, and he was the student of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas. So he says, regarding Sayyidan Muhasuran, actually this is the tafsir, he was a great mufassir because he learned from the greatest tafsir of the ummah, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas. And so in this ayat, which is describing Sayyidina Yahya, the Prophet Yahya, Prophet John, I suppose they call him, that he was Sayyidan Muhasuran. Sayyidan means a chief and a very honorable and very high-ranked individual. It has various meanings, but that's basically linguistic. Wahasuran. And he was also he was celibate. He did not approach women at all. He was totally disconnected from them. That was previous peoples. We don't have that in Islam. That's not praiseworthy in Islam. But that was Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam also, and Sayyidina Yahya were both, they had that characteristic. They were cut off from the world and the worldly pleasures, and among them was marriage and the pleasure which is obtained through relationships with women. So now Ikramah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says Sayyid. We meant Sayyid is the chieftain, someone who was very honorable, in the people. So the Sayyid actually is the one who controls himself in a fit of rage and does not let his anger overpower him. This is the Sayyid. Okay. So now, since I didn't have a lot of time today, I had to read the book by other things, so I couldn't write down a lot of things. We'll just read from the book, and I'm just mentioning the highlights of these particular topics that are mentioned in the book. So there's a number of instances, or also stories and events, which also portray how do we control anger, or what it does, or things connected to anger. So one of them is that روينا أن ذو القرنين لقي ملكا من الملائكة فقال علمني علما أزداد به إيمانا ويقينا. So it said that Dhul Qarnayn, he met an angel from among the angels. Wallahu a'lam. Now again, these riwayats, Allah knows best about their authenticity, but the meanings are quite correct. So at least we can take a lesson from that. So he says he met an angel from among the angels, and he said, teach me something, give me some knowledge, teach me some knowledge, which I will thereby increase in my iman and yaqeen, my belief and my certainty in belief. So what did the angel tell him? لا تغضب. Don't get angry. فإن الشيطان أكثر ما يكون على ابن آدم حين يغضب. And he explains why. He says, because Satan will be the most powerful that he will ever be when a human being is angry. When you get angry, you lose control. So what happens? Satan comes in and takes control of the mind. He takes control of the situation. You're out of control because anger now, as we're going to see, it totally takes a person out of control of his mind, his heart, his tongue, and his limbs. So now Satan comes in and just takes control, and he's on the driver's seat. So don't get angry, because Satan will have the most power over a human being when he's in a fit of anger. وَرَدَّ الْغَضَبِ الْكَظَمِ. So what should we do? Control, stifle your anger, because anger is something that it's a human nature. It comes, we start feeling it. So what do? We don't just flow with it, we control it. And also has given us that ability. So sort of take a stranglehold of that ghadab and bring it under control. Suppress it. وَسَكِّنْ بِالْتُؤَدَى. And calm down that anger with taking it slowly. don't be hasty. We say tuada. What's the word I want? Go slowly. What's the opposite of haste? Huh? Huh? In other words, don't rush into things. Take it slowly, and take one of our management gurus. He says, if a calamity, takes place in your business, okay, before you jump up and start, going into a tangent, he said, take 2 Panadols, sit back for 10 minutes, and don't say anything. That's the best they came up with. So we don't need Panadol, and we're gonna take it a much higher step. We're going to sit back before we say anything and react. We're going to take it easy, and we're going to start dhikr of Allah. Subhanallah. If it's a problem, if it's a calamity, what do we say? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that those people who are afflicted by a calamity, they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. We are for Allah and we're going to return to it. So they remember Allah. And then we don't react. Right? And then stifle that anger. And then once we've got the anger under control and we're thinking straight, then we think very carefully before we speak or we act. This is very critical. So whenever we get angry, the most important thing is don't speak. This is usually what happens. People get angry and then their tongue just like a machine gun starts going off. And after the machine gun, releases its bullets, you can't bring them back, right? They're going to hit wherever they were aimed. So, anger, try and control it. Don't speak, don't act. Take it easy, relax. Do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salat ala Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam is extremely cooling. And we're going to see other interventions as well. Making wudu, laying down, other things, inshallah, we'll see that later on, inshallah. Okay. ورد الغضب بالكظم والسكن بالتؤدى, by taking it easy, going step by step, not being hasty. إياك والعجل, and beware of being hasty, as we just talked about. فإنك إذا عجلت أخطأت حظك. If you get hasty, what's going to happen? You're going to spoil your portion of khair. The goodness that otherwise would be available for you, you would have stifled that from yourself. You would have become mahroom. Deny yourself of any portion of good that would be there for the taking. With ghadab, with anger, acting upon one's anger is going to spoil that portion of khair. وكن سهلا لينا للقريب والبعيد. This is wonderful advice. And be easygoing and flexible for those people who are close to you and those people who are not, who are far away. You have specific relationship with them. Everyone. Hayyinan layyinan. Easygoing, easy to deal, flexible, accommodative. Of course, within the bounds of Sharia. We're not flexible outside of the bounds of Sharia. There's no flexibility there. However, within the bounds of Sharia, be easygoing, be flexible. What? La takun jabbaran anina. Don't become belligerent, overbearing, and become a tyrant. Okay. So that was the advice, as it's mentioned, that was given to Dhul Qarnayn. Whether it was given to Dhul Qarnayn actually, in fact, or not, but it's great advice in any case, right? Then there's a story that's narrated that Iblis, Satan, came to one of the prophets. It's mentioned Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, but who knows? To verify that, we don't know. But anyway, it's interesting advice as well. So Rawina and Iblis, la'anahullah, Barali Musa alayhi salam. So it's been narrated to us that Iblis, Allah's curse be upon him, he came to Musa and he said, Ya Musa, iyaka wal hidda. What makes this a bit spurious is because Satan never gives good advice to anyone. So, in any case, but it's good advice in any case. So, iyaka wal hidda. Beware of sharp temper. Hidda. Hidda actually means sharpness. Sharpness here means the sharp temper. Right? فإني ألعب بالرجل الحديد كما يلعب الصبيان بالكرة. He says, I play with people, who have short and sharp tempers, like the little kids play with the ball. In other words, I have a good time with them. Okay? وإياك والنساء فإني لم أنصب فخا قد أثبت في نفسي من فخ أنصبه بالمرأة. And also be careful of women. What does it mean, be careful of women? Be careful of falling into fitna, into temptations, illicit and impermissible relationships with women. And he says, verily, I have not set up a trap for men more hopeful for him, because he's trying to trap and he's trying to misguide the entirety of humanity. He says, I don't have any trap in my repertoire better than this. So therefore, we have rules and regulations in Islam pertaining to the mixing of the sexes. We're not just like everybody else. We have rules and regulations which are for our protection, to keep us from the machinations and the tricks of shaitan and our nufus. Allahu Akbar. وَإِيَّاكَ وَالشُّحْ. And beware of greediness, miserliness. فَإِنِّي أُفْسِدُ عَلَى الشَّحِيءِ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. That person who's greedy and miserly, I destroy his dunya and his akhirah. It's this world and the next. So also, it's mentioned, وَكَانِ يُقَالْ اتَّقُوا الْغَضَبِ فَإِنُّ يُفْسِدُ الْإِيمَانِ كَمَا يَفْسِدُ الصَّبْرَ الْعَصْرِ. It's also said that beware, be fearful, guard, yourselves from anger, because it destroys iman. Not only destroys relationships, it destroys, your positioning, in the world, but it destroys iman, just as sabr destroys asal. There's a type of element that if it goes into the honey, it ruins the honey altogether. So, وَالْغَضَبْ عَدُوٌ لِلْعَقْلِ. And also, anger is the enemy of your intelligence. It also covers the intelligence and destroys it. Then, what is the reality? What is anger itself? So very amazing. This is actually the khulasat of what Imam Ghazali rahimahullah says, something to this extent. حقيقة الغضب غليان الدم القلب لطلب الانتقام. So we're talking about here, and keep in mind that we're talking about the anger which is madhmoom, which is non-praise, it's blameworthy, right? And so that ghadab is a ghadab which is coming from oneself for oneself. And what happens is, cause it ghilyan, it's a boiling of the blood of the heart. Boiling of the blood of the heart, and it produces talab al-intiqam, to take retribution. So obviously we understand from this that he's talking about that kind of ghadab, that somebody says something to us, or somebody does something to us, or some situation, it causes this anger, which is connected to our own self, our own betterment, or our own position, or what have you. So this type of anger is an anger which I have towards other regarding myself. So what happens? As a result of that, now I have no thought in my mind except to take retribution, intiqam. فمتى غضب الإنسان ثارت نار الغضب ثورانا يغلي به دم القلب. So when a person gets angry in this context, so what happens is that the fire of anger boils and it explodes within his heart, within the blood of the heart. As a result of that, we yantashiru fil uruq, and this boiling blood now flows through the body. And you see, when you get angry, people, their face gets red, their eyes get bloodshot, and their veins start standing. So actually, this is happening. It's actually have a physiological impact as well as psychological and spiritual. فينتشر في العروق ويرتفع إلى أعلى البدن, and then it carries up to the higher portions of the body. كما يرتفع الماء الذي يغلي في القدر, just as water, as it boils, it goes up into the pot or into the vessel it's boiling in. So similarly, this boiling blood is now moving up, and then ultimately it goes into the brain, and it really causes a problem. كما يرتفع الماء الذي يغلي في القدر ولذلك يحمر الوجه والعين والبشرة. Therefore, the redness of the eyes and the face and everything. وكل ذلك يحكي لون ما وراء في حمرة الدم. And all of that actually indicates that redness of the skin in the eyes and all that indicates, what? This boiling blood from behind the skin. And he says, just like تحكي الزجاجة لون ما فيها, just like a glass jar, it shows you, the color of something from behind it. وإنما ينبسط الدم إذا غضب على ما دونه ويستشعر قدرة عليه. So now he's talking about also the positioning of anger, because sometimes we get angry with somebody who's has a status lower than us, and we are able to actually take retribution, and act upon our anger and take it out on the person. On the other hand, there are people who have a higher status, like your boss or the leader or somebody or your parents or somebody. So you get, so that causes another type of situation. And then you have a third situation where there's somebody is your peer on your same level of status or similar. So there's different there's different reactions in all three of these different cases. So this is the type of situation or reaction that takes place when one becomes angry with somebody that he can actually take retribution from. فإن كان الغضب الصدر ممن فوقه. So what about if the anger is regarding somebody who's above you in status? وكان معه يأس من الانتقام. There's no way that we're going to take it out on this person. For example, your boss or your ruler or somebody like that, or your elder or your parents or somebody like that. Okay? So what happens in this case? تولد منه انقباض الدم من ظاهر الجلد إلى جوف القلب. عجيب. So our ulama, how they perceive things and were able to see into these realities long before modern science had any clue about these things. They probably still don't have the insight that our ulama had. So he said, now, in this situation, what happens is that the blood of the heart, which was boiling and was now flowing all over the body, and he's ready to take action. So now, in this situation, because of the perception of the person that he can't take recompense from. So what happens? So this blood, it actually starts, what's the word I want? Contracts. Rather than expanding and blowing up, it contracts. Okay? And then what happens? So it goes into the heart and it creates huzn, creates, sorrow, anguish. Whereas when the person we can take intiqam, it has a different reaction. So this has a different reaction. This also has a very destructive reaction, obviously. People can die from extreme anguish, right? وَلِذَلِكَ يَصْفَرَّ اللَّوْنُ. As a result of that, now what happens, rather than the reddening of skin, you would generally see a yellowing of skin. People are in this situation. Okay? وإن كان الغضب من نظير يشق فيه تردد الدم بين الانقباض والانبساط. Now, the last situation is somebody who's at our own level, our peer. Okay? So here the blood is between expansion and contraction, right? تردد الدم بين الانقباض والانبساط فيحمر ويصفر. So sometimes it gets red, sometimes it gets yellow, and sometimes it goes into confusion and convulsion. فالانتقاب من قوة لقوة الغضب. So intiqam, so taking retribution, it is the fuel, or it is the food for the taking of. It comes from the anger itself. So this anger, it promotes and it propels towards this retribution, which in and of itself is something which we need to abstain from. And we see that our Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he would never take retribution for his own person. If somebody taunted him, if somebody mistreated him, abused him, he would not take retribution for himself unless there was a had from hududullah. There was an injunction from the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which were being, accosted or being compromised. And then he would become angry and take retribution for the sake of Allah, which is a whole different story. So, الناس في قوة الغضب على درجات ثلاثة. And people regarding regarding anger, there are three different categories. One is they have too much anger, another is they have too little anger, and one is that they have a balance of anger. So too much anger is what we already talked about. And too little anger, imagine somebody who doesn't get angry about anything, you know? Even his honor is being accosted, or somebody else of his family members' honor is being accosted, the injunctions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being torn apart in front of him, you know? So this is, this is more like, trees and rocks and animals, this is not human. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put anger in any of these emotions which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in the human being. They need to be there. There's a purpose for that. But they need to be controlled. They need to be nurtured. They need to be, refined. This is, we said, even the desire for the opposite sex is something that has to be there. Otherwise, how would humans, continue their progeny? And so forth. So all of these emotions and all of these human nature, it's there for a purpose. However, Islam shows us how to control it, how to refine it, and how to use it for an advantage. So, therefore, Nabi Sallallahu mentioned, "Man ahabba lillah wa abghadha lillah," who loves for the sake of Allah and he hates for the sake of Allah. He loves what Allah loves and he hates what Allah hates. Nabi Sallallahu mentions that this is a person whose iman is complete. This is very critical. So what is the golden median? To have a balance. In terms of our own selves, we control our anger. We do not, act upon it or speak upon it. When there is an accostation, there's an affliction to other individuals, someone's rights are being, usurped. The orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are being broken. His prohibitions are being openly, they're being flaunted. So here, we hate that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we get angry and we take appropriate measure. But again, getting angry doesn't mean we get angry and start doing foolish things. We don't get angry in the sense that we just talked about, where we lose our control and we lose, In other words, we are propelled by this feeling of anger towards the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take appropriate action, which has been shown to us by Sharia through the Quran and Sunnah. Okay? Allahu Akbar. فَلَا يُهْمَلُ الْإِفْرَاطُ فِي. So therefore, the excess in anger, it's not praiseworthy. لأنه يخرج العقل والدين يخرج العقل والدين من سياستهما, because it will take the human intelligence and even the physical being of the human being, it will take it completely out of balance. فلا يبقى الإنسان مع ذلك نظر ولا فكر ولا اختيار. And in that case, he doesn't remain with understanding, with proper thinking process and proper selection, proper decision making. والتفريط في هذه القوى أيضا مذموم. And also, no, total neglect and too little of ghadab or anger, for this proper place. This is also mذموم. This is also detrimental and not praiseworthy, blameworthy. لأنه يبقي لا حمية ولا غيره. He won't have any, he won't have a feeling of honor or protecting anyone's rights or his own or anyone else's honor. When فقد الغضب بالكلية عجز عن رياضة النفس. It's also a very interesting point. And a person who has lost the basic nature of anger altogether, he will now be incapable of the disciplining of himself. This is a very interesting concept. What does he mean by that? إنما تتم تسلط الغضب على الشهوة فيغضب على نفسه عند الميل إلى الشهوات الخسيسة وفقد الغضب مذموم فينبغي أن يطلب الوسط بين الطريقتين. So if a person doesn't have ghadab at all, he needs to sometimes be angry on himself. When he sees himself moving in the wrong direction, or he sees himself following, a particular, desire or passion which is going to bring about his destruction, which is not praiseworthy, is blameworthy. So this anger will come to a positive play by being angry to oneself to discipline oneself and fight with one's nafs. We have to be angry with nafs. Right? To the extent that we, fight it and bring it under control. Right? As Nabi Wasallam says, Ada aduwik nafsuka allati bayna jambayk. Your most, malicious enemy is your own nafs, which is there between your rib cage, your own chest, within yourself. So this anger, again, focused and and directed towards a positive direction, that this is something that this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this this feeling in the first place. It's to be used in its proper place. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think that's quite a heavy dose. We can practice this until next week. So what do we do when we start feeling angry? Wait. Stop. Put on the brakes. Don't speak. Don't act. Take control. Remember, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, La taghdab. Don't get angry. Relax. Bring your anger under control with the tawfiq of Allah. Say, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan. And we're going to talk about that in detail next week. What are the various interventions, or what are the various methodologies which Allah and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has informed us about? So inshallah, in the meantime, let's practice that, not to release our ghadab. Whenever we get angry, particularly for ourselves, someone has made us angry, we don't speak, we don't act, until we bring ourselves under control, bring our anger under control, and don't take retribution for ourselves. Okay? I just wanted to give me and all of us tawfiq, and next week, inshallah, we'll see more manifestations of ghadab and how to cure it, inshallah. Any questions? Yeah.
So I feel like there's a difference between don't get angry and don't act on your anger. Because on the one hand, you do want to have some amount of anger, so you're not doing anything. It's just that you don't want to act on it.
Exactly. That's exactly the thing. Even we see that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sometimes somebody would say something or do something, and we would see the Sahaba say, we saw that Nabi was getting angry. What did he say? What did he do? And if he said something, it was after taking full control of the situation and saying what was absolutely appropriate and necessary at that point. So exactly, that's a very important point. And that's what we said, it's a natural tendency of human being. And when we actually feel anger coming on, and we don't react negatively, and we take control of the situation, inshallah, with the tawfiq of Allah, we're going to learn how to do that more extensively next week, inshallah. That is also a very, honorable action. That's an amal as-salih. That's a good action. It's a righteous action, which we will get reward for. We get reward for doing what we need to do and not doing what we're not supposed to do. Tark, it's called in leaving something that also requires an effort, because you have to go against yourself, your nature, or your nafs. Right? Is that clear? So yes, we will feel angry. That's natural. That needs to be there, but we need to control it. And in doing so, we'll not only save ourselves from the travail, but we will also gain reward in taqarrub ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah.
I also think the metaphor of fire and clay is interesting, because if you heat clay, it hardens. So it's almost like there's a boiling, and then eventually, if anger controls a person for too long, they become hardened and unable to move.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So if we don't want to get fired up, otherwise we lose our clay type of consistency. We become hard like rocks. And also the mentions in the Quran, and then your hearts became hardened like rocks, or even harder thereof. Even rocks sometimes split asunder and water flows out of it. Such type of hardened hearts, nothing comes out of it. Anything else?
Is it a situation where to get angry becomes like a wrong thing?
Because
you cannot get angry on certain people, certain relationships, right? you cannot get angry on your parents. So
Yeah,
any-
of course. Yeah, you can't get angry with your parents. You can't even say to them, "Oof."
So,
ولا
is there,
تقل لهما أوف.
so apart from parents, what are the other relationships?
Well, you see,
It
this
becomes
every
around.
relationship has its own special characteristic. There's relationship of husband and wife. There's elders and youngers. There's brothers, sisters, relations, neighbors, Muslims, non-Muslims. In any case, we don't take retribution for ourselves, and only in the case where there is a clear prohibition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is being broken or something, and we have to assess the situation. So I'm angry about seeing that a particular order of Allah is not being performed, or it's being flouted, or there's a prohibition which is being openly, we're doing it. So, and that has to do with joining the right and forbidding the evil, which we've been talking about after Isha, the past several days. So this also requires to assess the situation. So if we want, as we mentioned, it's not simply that we have to just speak about stuff, but we have to, what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has told us, that we see wrong, we have to try and transform it into right. So if my speaking, and how do I speak, do I hope that it's going to bring about a transformation like that? Are the people or the persons or the person that I'm going to address, do they even have do I assess the situation that they would even listen, or that I would hope that there would be perhaps some, acceptance of the admonition or not? Sometimes we can assess the situation and see that by saying something, even what's right, is going to even inflame the situation even more. So rather than transferring into good, it's going to create even more evil. Create more tension and more. So therefore, sometimes we have to keep quiet, and we have to just tawajjuh ilallah, and every situation is different, and every relationship has its own secrets. So that is a fine art. It's a skill set, right? We have to learn. So once we understand the basic principles, then we start applying them, and we're going to make a lot of mistakes. And then through these mistakes and through our further learning, inshallah, we will continue to be on the path of knowledge, and we'll learn step by step, inshallah. Does that help? Inshallah. طيب. Anything else? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.